Thank you for listening to this episode of Lending Thoughts, sponsored by Rocket Pro. Today, I'm joined by Gord Appel. Gord is one of the co-founders and leaders of Indi Mortgage, which is a growing mortgage brokerage currently in 6 provinces. Gord and I have an awesome discussion. He talks about how you could start your mortgage business with $50 at a coffee shop, which I thought was a phenomenal idea. We talk a little bit about friends and family and how they may not be the best clients to go after when you're first building your mortgage business. And we talk about being present as a leader. So make sure to listen in. It's a great conversation. Gord, thanks for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So pleasure to have you on. Our teams work together and work well together. So excited to have you talk to the audience today. And I always like to just start by giving people some information about you and taking it in whatever direction you want to go. So can you tell us your life story in 60 seconds or less, please?
Well, I'm getting pretty old, so 60 seconds is not a long time. But, I've been in the mortgage business now 20 years, been in sales my whole life. And, I've lived across the country. Like I said, I've been in the mortgage business now for 20 years. Running Indi Mortgage for the last 5.5 with my business partner, Gord Ross, and our silent, not so silent partner, Tanya Appel. We've been humming along. So that's maybe 60 seconds, not my whole life, but kind of gives you a bit of a thing to talk about.
It's helpful. You said sales, always sales. Was it always mortgage or was it other types of sales before mortgage that sort of like led to mortgage? And then I'm curious how you ended up in mortgage, or as some people say, like fell into mortgage, because very few people choose it.
Sales has been a variety of different things. I've done it all from door-to-door vacuum sales, believe it or not.
That's real sales.
It's hardcore. It wasn't for me, but I did do it for a little while. And I have a lot of respect for those that do it. So it's, definitely something that helped with skills development. Retail sales was something similar. I worked at Future Shop for a bunch of years and, fell into mortgages. I didn't fall into it. I feel like I was coerced. I had a good friend that was in the business and, we were talking about the industry as a whole, and it never really occurred to me to become a mortgage broker. Every time I thought about entering the real estate business, I thought about being a realtor and dragging people all over town and showing them 50 stinky houses or whatever the case was really didn't appeal to me. But I was always drawn to the real estate industry, whether that was because of that personal connection, having moved around quite a bit. Housing always mattered to me, or if it was because of the big commissions and, being in sales, that was always part of the formula as well. But I was very attracted to it. So when I looked at the economics of being a mortgage broker, when I looked at the value that we provide to the transaction by not charging fees generally and that sort of thing, it made a little bit of sense for me to take a deeper look. So got registered, took the course, and very quickly fell in love with it. It took me about 10 deals to close the first one. But after that, I was off to the races.
So the underwriting didn't come naturally.
No, it sure didn't. I could make the phone ring, but I didn't.
Yeah. You could sell them, but you couldn't close them yet. That took a little practice. That's funny.
Definitely took some time.
And you were doing that as an independent agent and sort of like growing your book of business, having conversations. Who were your first, mortgages coming from? Were they referrals, family, friends?
I would have thought family and friends were going to be my first source of business, but it literally took me 6 years to get a friend to use me. And I think it was a little bit longer than that before a family member did. Right before getting into the mortgage business, I worked in car rental. So people thought I was in car rental. For 5 years, they would call me and get a deal on cars. So they didn't think of me as a mortgage broker. And that was before the days, and I know I'm sounding old when I say stuff like that, but it was before the days of really pumping it on social media. Unless you were always talking to them, they didn't think about what you were doing. They thought about what you were doing the last time. So social media allows us to really be a lot more present as mortgage brokers. So that is certainly an advantage that exists today. My first deals came from knocking on doors. I did this thing at Starbucks where I would leave $50 with the barista and tell her I would pay for any of the drinks for anybody coming in the store. And I would just sit and work away on a deal or on my next marketing idea or just do some shopping on the internet and sit at the Starbucks and just work away on my laptop and pay for coffees. And every now and then someone would say thank you and I would engage them in a conversation. Very rarely did I start with a mortgage conversation, but that would lead to something further. And eventually I would get a lead that became a mortgage. And The thing that it made me realize is that our client is actually adult Canadians. If you look at the statistics, 66.5% of Canadians are homeowners. So that means they have had or do have our product. Nobody walks around, well, very few people walk around with a suitcase full of money to go buy a house. So if you're talking to one of those 66.5% of Canadians that are already homeowners, they understand and need or have had our product. The other 33.5%, they want it. They're the renters that want to eventually have our product. So if you're talking to an adult Canadian, you're talking to a consumer. And I found if I could time it right, the Starbucks between 2 and 3 o'clock was kind of the sweet spot. It was right before school pickup. So the moms would come in, have their coffees, have a chat, and then they'd take off and go do the school pickup. But they was slow enough that they could slow down and ask a few questions. So that was one of the things that I did early in my career.
I've never heard of this strategy before. I thought I heard them all.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I could spend the entire time talking to you with just like very specific details about that strategy in itself. But that is very interesting. And I think it just goes to show like there's so many different ways to do this business. Totally. There's so many different ways. And to your point, like everybody's a potential client. Avoid the ball pit at your local kids play place. Other than that, you're probably talking to potential clients. And even if you're there, you can probably talk to one of the parents who's watching their kids in the ball pit, and their parents probably own a house or, have aspirations of someday owning a home. So
one of my mentors, Brian Gentles, always says, don't be a secret agent. So, if you could be at a hockey game, you could be, as you say, at the ball pit watching your kids. But, most people will ask you what you do. Have a good answer for it. I'm a mortgage broker is a terrible answer. So have a good answer. And if you have a good answer and you're continuing a genuine conversation with someone, you'll make a connection. And when they need you, they'll probably use you if you've done a good job in creating a genuine connection.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So you actually led me into what I was going to ask you, which is that like, how would you approach that conversation with all these folks? You just said like, actually, I think telling people, I'm a mortgage broker, and expecting them to know what that means and then do something about that information is actually a terrible strategy. And I agree. So when people ask that question, what would you say? And what have you said historically? Is there any one thing or does it change?
It does change. I think, very rarely is it the first question someone will ask you. It will be the first question if there's an awkward silence. But when you first meet somebody, you have an opportunity to talk a little bit. And then from there, you're going to include some of what your response is when it comes around to the what do you do or how do you make money kind of conversation. And
right.
Often you'll drop some hints as to what you do. Oh, the marketplace, this or that. I remember when the marketplace was tanking in Alberta, and it's done it a few times, but, we would go out in 2008, and, obviously there was a lot of pain in the marketplace at that time. And I would go to meet people and they would, look at you with pity. You're in the mortgage business or you're in real estate. Oh, it must be tough. How are you making ends meet? And that would be a different kind of opportunity. So I would say things like, we actually are in the business of helping people like you. So yeah, it sounds right now you listen to the radio and nobody's buying houses, but you're not buying a house either. And you probably still want to save money on the house that you have. So that's really where we focus. We tend to deal with more clients that just want to keep the house they have and save some money on it. Look at their options. Maybe they want to consolidate some debts. Maybe they want to reduce the payment that they have, or maybe they want to pay it off even faster. So we really focus on people like you. So I would pull them into that conversation that they were asking me about the marketplace. So it really just sort of depends on what you're doing and where you're at. And again, it comes down to authenticity. You're a mortgage broker. You do it for a reason and you understand what it means to do it. Including that statement of I'm a mortgage broker is hoping that the consumer understands what that means. They might think a mortgage broker is a guy wearing a leather jacket that's, going to give you cash against your house. They might think that we are the place that you go when you've got bad credit. They might think that if you get declined at a bank, that's where you go. All these different things. And all of them are true, but they're going to pigeonhole you into some of what that is. And maybe not all are true because I don't think too many of us are wearing leather jackets standing around the corner handing out cash. But
not anymore.
But you get the meaning, right?
Yeah.
So I think, having the answer is really around who's asking the question. and being plugged
Yeah.
into the conversation you're having.
I mean, it's so true. If you've spent any time at a barbecue with friends and family and tried to just explain to people that you're a mortgage broker and ask for their reaction and ask where they get their last mortgage from, you'll just get that information from people all the time. And you've probably heard it a million times, and you've been doing this longer than I have, but like, oh no, I'm good. I already deal with such and such bank. And you're like, oh no, so do I. Right?
That's right.
Here's the great news. Yeah, I actually work with them too. The difference with me is that, they're going to give you one option. I have the ability to give you their option plus a whole other suite of options that may actually be better than the option that they've provided to you, because that's all they have to offer. And it creates a whole conversation. But if you don't start that conversation the right way, and especially if you've sold vacuums door to door, the first thing people do is they put their hands up and they say, I'm not interested. Or it sounds like you might be trying to sell me something based on that leather jacket. It sort of like leads me into what I wanted to talk to you about on the next front, which is that like you existed in this industry at a time where you were your own marketer as well. And not only were you marketing your service, but you were also marketing for mortgage brokers. Now you're running a brokerage in Indi, in that you're teaching and training other folks how to build their business, how to market themselves and things like that. But going back to the early days, like how did you even market to clients what a mortgage brokerage was? I do think, and you could see based on the trend, people are using mortgage brokers more and more and more. And that is something that we are deeply passionate about assisting in this industry. We think that mortgage brokers are the best for consumers. We believe that in our hearts. And what were some of the things that you were doing early on to just let people know what would mortgage brokers do? How did you market that?
So to me, it's always been this constant effort. All of us need to be doing it. Promoting the value of working with a mortgage broker is not something that you get to buy a billboard and just everybody reads and then you're done. Everybody's educated. Partly because the landscape is shifting underneath us at all times. We're constantly getting new rules. We had new rules, in the last few weeks. So we're going to continue to see that. So I think it's really about communicating with your sphere of influence. So what I would do is tell stories, and I would tell stories to the people that were in my circles. And we can do that on social media now and tell stories about the people we've helped, the types of consumers that we've helped. Instead of saying you should work with me, you could say somebody that's like you worked with me. I just completed a mortgage for some people that are in the same situation as you, and I got them a great deal. They worked with their bank, but we actually moved them to a different bank. They started with theirs, we moved them to a different one, and we got them a better rate, or we got them a better solution, or we got them whatever that situation was. But if you tell a story about something that you've done, and you tell a variety of different stories, eventually your network will understand what you do and will see themselves in your business. It could be a referral source. It could be somebody that you've met at BNI at a networking group, a realtor, or it could just be somebody in your family or social network. But they need to understand where they fit. And I think storytelling is a great way to get there.
I love that reframe to tell it in the form of a story and relate it to other human beings who are like me, right? Because we do that as humans. We identify ourselves with certain characteristics and bucket that into specific groups and think about our own identity, whether or not we're consciously thinking about it or subconsciously identifying as somebody who, right? So thinking about, being at that family barbecue and you got your aunt there with you and you say that, you do mortgages, and she says, no, I'm good. I get all my products from National. I'm a high net worth client there, right? They may not outwardly say that, but they're thinking to themselves like, I've got, a couple $100,000 or I've got $1 million in assets with X bank, for example. And to be able to come back and say, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you probably, get really well taken care of there. In fact, I was just helping this family and much the same, are in really good financial shoes. They're used to getting a pretty decent rate, but just on their most recent renewal, for whatever reason, the bank just didn't give them a great renewal offer on their mortgage. So what I actually did, I actually showed them the network program with such and such. Didn't even have to get all the usual income documents, which are often painful for folks like you. I just did a net worth program and moved them over here and saved them X amount of money and did this and did that. And now they're super happy, and they go home, and aunt is talking to uncle and going, should we check on that?
It
just
takes
that little bit of doubt,
sales.
right? And then just wait,
Yes. That waiting is the critical element of it, because you don't want to try and move in at the family barbecue. Just plant the seeds. She's going to stay your aunt, tomorrow, the next day, the day after. And that's the thing that I think we often get confused about in this business, is that it is a very long sales cycle. And it's a sales cycle that we are not in control of the timeline on. So, you could pick up a client and they signed with their bank yesterday. They're going to use you for your next mortgage, but they're in for 5 years. Does that mean they're not a client? Does that mean that you didn't do a good job acquiring a client and building your business? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means you're not going to get paid for a while. So you have to have patience. And it's the same thing in the scenario you're talking about. You plant those seeds and then wait for your aunt to come back to you. Or the next conversation, and maybe it goes a little farther, and maybe you never do business with your aunt, because family members are difficult. Friends are the same. They don't necessarily want you to see their credit, their assets.
Totally.
Most people would like to be further along in their financial journey than they are currently. There's a little bit of embarrassment associated with it. Often we get caught up in what we want out of the situation. We forget to look at the whole picture, and that client will work with us when they're ready to. We just have to put ourselves in the right position to.
Right. And maybe it's not them, but maybe it's the referral that they give you. I think you said it took 6 years before friends and family started working with you to do their mortgages. Was that the reason? Because I think that for new agents especially, that is one of the early realizations. They think they just changed their Facebook profile and Instagram or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
To mortgage broker. They put out, 2 posts to say, hey, by the way, I do mortgages now, and no one calls them. And then they'll be at their next family friend event or something like that, and they'll hear in passing someone that they know and care about and that loves and cares about them say, yeah, I actually just did my mortgage with such and such. And you're going, what?
I'm sitting
How
right
could
here.
you? Right? Like, we're in the same friend group chat and we talk every day, and you just got your mortgage. Is that a trust thing? Is it fear? Because I've seen that before too.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things that it could be. Certainly trust can enter into it, although I think it's less likely to be trust than it is an element of embarrassment or a sense of privacy. A lot of us were taught we don't talk about money with our family. We don't talk about money with our friends. And this is effectively like, I'm going to need to see your pay stub. I'm going to need to see some of your asset statements, and I'm going to look at your credit, and I'm going to see that you missed that payment or whatever the case is. And I think that there's an element of concern there that people have that embarrassment. But I think most of that is overcome with good communication, like most things, right? And so talking to somebody that you're close with, there's a few different ways that you can approach that. If you're new to the industry, new to the business, you might want to talk to the people that you're close with and to say, look, I need some practice. Would you mind sending me your mortgage statement just so that I can look at it and start to get some of this knowledge that comes off of looking at all of the different brands' statements? And maybe when I go through that, I'll see something and I'll let you know about it. But really, I'm just looking for some practice. So it gives you an opportunity to kind of open the door a little bit. And I think, if you frame it the right way, your friends and family will support you. What I was doing wrong, the reason I think it took me a long time to get that is I wasn't framing it in the right way. I would ask my brother or my parents for business, but I really didn't go much beyond that. And they used me when theirs came up for renewal. So probably was around 5 years or whatever the case was. But, getting further into the friendship circle and into the family circle took the establishment of that expertise. So being positioned as an expert isn't the same as just being positioned as a practitioner. And in order to get my family on side, they needed to see me as an expert because they had seen me my whole life, or a good chunk of it. They saw me when I was, long hair skateboarding and believed I could be in a band for a career. And then they saw me sort of bounce around and sell vacuums for a bit and do these other things. And so they, probably weren't feeling that level of comfort that I was going to be the guy to trust their most important debt to, and this most important thing that they have. So we have to remember also that even though we want it, it's not necessarily what we want. In fact, it's got very little to do with what we want as to whether or not we get that transaction. It is all about the consumer and making sure that they feel that we are going to be the best source for them to accomplish their goals.
I mean, you just had me thinking, it's so funny because everyone always wants to start there with friends and family. But as somebody who's on the path to expert, I mean, if you've closed 0 to 10 mortgages, you probably actually don't want to start with friends and family, truthfully.
Right.
You probably want to get your practice on a stranger who you don't have to see at the next barbecue.
And who probably feels better giving you direct feedback. Like they don't want to hurt your feelings if they're your family. If they're not, they're going to tell you, hey man, you dropped the ball, or I expected better from you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So as you think about people building their mortgage businesses today, we obviously live in a very different world. Not saying that the Starbucks idea is a bad one, for the record. I might actually start training on that. But as you think about the new mortgage agents, I mean, Indi, you guys have how many mortgage agents today, roughly?
We're about 370 today.
370 mortgage agents, and new folks come into the fold. Like, how do you give them advice when they ask, where do I go to start building my business? Because the same way, they might come in with the long hair, played in a band, and now they learned a little bit of sales somewhere else. And now they're like, hey, mortgages are my new product and I'm going to make a living here. And they go to you or some other folks on the team and they go, what should I do to find clients? What do you tell them?
Well, so a couple of things. First is we are not really a training shop. So if you're joining Indi as a new broker, you're joining with a mentor. We don't have corporate training. Training or mentorship are critical to success, especially at the beginning of a new career. Somebody coming out of a bank as a bank mortgage specialist and going into mortgage brokering could probably find most of the way there on their own. They would still need to have a good support group around them to understand the nuance of the product, the compliance elements, that sort of thing. But new to industry, we don't hire unless you have a mentor. And a mentor, it's a two-way street. You both have to want each other. The mentor has to be willing to give you their time, their true expertise, and you have to be willing to put the time in to get it. And that means being on their schedule, not on your own. If you have a mentor, somebody who's worthy of being a mentor is usually a top producer and somebody who is going to be busy. And taking their time when they're willing to give it to you is when you should take it. So I would say that is number one. What I tell people that are new to the industry, and I still do talk to a number of new to industry through my association work or at Indi if they come to us directly. And I tell them, it's really making sure that you know where your business is going to come from. So it might be realtors. It might be financial planners. It might be networking groups. It might be your community association, wherever it is that you're going to get your business from. You have to start with knowing where you're going to get it and then how you're going to get it. And the difference between a business plan that works and one that doesn't is an action step that goes along with it. So you can make your business plan. I'm going to get my business from realtors and I'm going to get it in this way. But if you don't transpose that into your calendar, into specific action items, protected time to take that action, your business plan won't work. So again, adult Canadians, 66.5% of Canadians are homeowners. If you're talking to adult Canadians or people that work with adult Canadians, you're talking to potential clients or potential referral sources. Be conscious about how you approach those marketplaces. If you do that, you'll find some success.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking about actions. And I like that because, one thing I learned, and I'm not sure exactly where I learned it, so forgive me for not giving the proper credit, but it's action-based goals instead of outcome-based goals. Oftentimes, especially now we're talking here in January, it's that time of year, right? It's that time of year when everyone's coming in, they're going to lose 30 pounds. But very rarely do people actually walk that all the way back to talk about what that looks like in a single day or like a single morning or a single meal or whatever that is. Like for me right now, I'll just speak for myself here. I'm trying to get healthier. Health is one of my goals and I'm primarily healthy, but I know that there's some more steps that I could take to get myself to where I want to go. And what I find is that when I focus on the year, I will often fail. When I focus on the day, I will often win at the thing that I am trying to win at in the day. It's like I can't necessarily control the end state. What I can do is I can schedule one great day. And if I have, one great day today, followed by one great day tomorrow, and I have 250 great days in a 365 day, calendar year, it's probably going to get me to where I'm trying to go for the year. And if I do that on the most important things, you said real estate agents, if you're going to build your business around realtors, so what do you need to be doing? You probably need to be talking to realtors. How do you talk to realtors? You pick up the phone or you get in the car and you start visiting some offices, go to the conferences or go to whatever and just go do that. Like map that out. What does that look like? not what's the end state, but like what things will you need to do. Forget about the achievement.
Right.
You might suck for like a really long time, but if you just go do that for long enough, just like knocking on doors for vacuums, I can't imagine many people are successful immediately out of the gate. It's like a major shock to the system the first time you try to sell something door to door. I've done it. It changes your whole view on society. Like you go around to all your public places and everyone's like smiling and like waving and everyone's like super kind, but go knock on someone's door. They haven't even heard what you have to sell yet, and they're treating you terribly. And you're like, I didn't know human beings could talk to other human beings.
It is eye-opening. And, I actually know an agent that went door to door selling mortgages. That's maybe even more difficult because it's not tangible, right? And he went and did it for quite a long time. In the end, it was a 3% success ratio. He'd knock on 100 doors and he'd get about 3 mortgages out of it. It's a long effort. But again, there is no substitution in this business or in any business for doing the work. You can choose that work, you can choose other work, but if you don't do any work, you're not going to get any results. So that's why I say be conscious about it. Like take a look at, I'm going to get this marketplace. Great. Now let's build a strategy. Great. Now we got a strategy. How are we going to implement that strategy? What are we going to do day to day, week to week to check in that we've actually implemented the right strategy? And then once we get to certain checkpoints, let's make sure we're accomplishing some goals. To your point, it is absolutely critical to focus on the steps once you've created that plan. Continuing to go back to the plan is where most people fail. It's not time to plan every day. You plan once and then you execute and then you check in on your plan.
Yeah. Because you could give someone else the advice. Typically, you know the answer. The answer is like do the thing. So they come in, they've got a mentor, new agent, let's say, and they're building their business, and you've helped people help people, and now with you and your partners, you're spending a lot of time running the Indi business. What has that transition been like from, just being a mortgage agent to the different world in which you're in now, which is running a mortgage brokerage in the day to day? And what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's actually been a lot of fun. The way we approach from a head office perspective is very much the way a broker or I approached my mortgage business. And that is that the broker is our client. So we don't transact at the head office level. We don't let anybody do deals because our broker is our client. We spend a lot of time focusing on what does the broker need, listening to them and asking them what do they need, because not every broker is the same. It's a self-employed environment. We've got 370 agents. We've got 370 ways that business is being done today and being attracted and being retained. And that's great. This is a very personal business, and we attract the type of people that we want to do business with. Often, not every single time is it a person that we've attracted that we want to do business with, but generally that's the case, right? So we as a business have treated it that way, and it's been really awesome to move into that part of this career for me personally. I've enjoyed the way that this company has grown in the last 5 years. We were 94 agents 5 years ago and 370 today, and we operate in 6 provinces. And Gord Ross is definitely the driving force behind all of that growth. And he's stretched our skills, my skills, and what I thought was possible just by virtue of him saying it is possible. So that has been just a really great dynamic for me as well, and has that personal growth. Also, to see my wife in her best skills in the marketing department. She was a broker for 10 years, so she got to really know what we do. But she's a marketer at heart. It's what she went to school for. She's like hardcore when it comes to branding and marketing and everything else. So to have her be in that great skill of hers and watch her flourish to the benefit of our clients and of our company is tremendous. So it's been a really great journey. Like I say, I love this industry, and I love what it's afforded me personally and allowed me to develop the skills environment as well as the financial environment. So yeah, all good.
Yeah, it's very cool. Becoming a family business as well, and growing something bigger than yourself. Do you think you could have done that had you not been a mortgage agent previously? Because you guys have built a very agent-centric brokerage, and Is that because you've done it yourself?
It's hard to say what you might have been like had you not done something. I did it for about 10 years as an agent and then moved into some leadership roles after that. But I think it really is where a good chunk of it comes from. But, in all of my sales environments, everything that I've done has really been about listening. So I think that good sales is about connecting the right things together. And the only way you can figure out what the right things are is if you stop for a minute and listen. So really it comes from there, and our willingness and our belief that we can always be better.
I love that on listening. I heard someone say not too long ago that they did a talk on stage about tips for becoming like a better speaker, and it went super viral. And they shortly after followed it up with tips for being a great listener, and like no one watched it.
Shocking, right?
We all want the hack, right? Just tell me what I need to say, when the actual hard part is listening. And that is actually the more important skill to being a great communicator and going out and delivering and selling a product to anybody. So, I mean, it's what made me want to start having these sorts of conversations. Oftentimes in the day-to-day leading a mortgage business, people like look at me and they're like, okay, now talk.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes like I actually would prefer to listen. Sometimes, that's why I like to have these conversations and call this podcast Lending Thoughts, is other people are lending their thoughts and hoping that we can share that with the community. But I do wonder now, having gone that route for yourself from agent to broker owner, and where you like to spend your time, because you've gone back to that sales aspect many, many times. Like, you sound like a true salesperson at heart and believe that that is the core of mortgage brokering, is great salespersonship. And I often say that sales is synonymous with communication. So you're really figuring out how to like communicate, how to serve, how to advise. Like, that's all a part of it. And then be able to communicate that back such that people will work with you instead of getting a mortgage any of the other 1,000 places they can go get it. So like, where do you like to spend your time now? Like, what do you like doing?
I like problem solving, and I like time with our team. So there's a couple of different places that I'm really spending a lot of my energy right now. My best contribution to the company is in making the company better. So what I try to do is solve the problems, but I only know about the problems when I'm listening. So I try and get present with the team. We have 5 different groups that we've created provincially, and then one national group that is our top brokers from each province. And then, of course, they go up to the national level. We consult with them twice a year. And so I look forward to those times. I run those meetings and pull in. So there's really 3 purposes for those meetings. One is to hear from them, hear from the street, so to speak, what's going on, what they need, where their pain points are, where their wins and successes are, those types of things. The second is to share with them what we've been working on from a head office perspective, or things that we're hearing from other regions. And the third is to create a collaborative opportunity for them to improve their businesses. And so we do that twice a year in all the regions, and we do the national one as well. I spend time with all of the department heads, making sure that when we deliver, we are delivering on our promises. So that means that making sure our promises are aligned with our actions, but also that our actions are aligned with our promises. So talking to the sales team is different from talking to the administration team, the inverse of the same conversation. But that's really where I spend my energy, is in making sure that we are the best that we can be, that we're looking for opportunities for constant improvement, and that we are delivering on the promises that we've made to the people that have been onboarded to this company.
So why do mortgage agents come to Indi Mortgage, and why do they stay then?
I think the biggest thing about it is that we're good. And by good, I mean we treat people well, we are transparent, we're honest, we're hardworking. We do what we say we're going to do. We're transparent about it. So if there's something going on, you'll know about it. If there's compensation being received, you'll know about it. We pay twice a week because we want to make sure that agents get what they're doing this for, which is to provide for their families and for their goals. We go out of our way to be that way. And I think that's the reason brokers stay. And I think the reason brokers join us in the first place is because they're looking for something that is the right balance between being self-employed and being employed. Looking for the stability and comfort of a bigger organization, knowing that the reach will be there when it comes time to dealing with lenders. Maybe it's acquiring a new lender, such as Rocket Pro recently, or having a great long-term relationship with some of the others. Yeah, of course. I'm excited about this partnership. I think we've struck a good balance between those two things. We recognize that our agents and brokers across the country are doing this for their own purposes, and they are self-employed, and at least in the eyes of the government, they're self-employed, and sometimes in their own eyes, we see them a little bit more like contract employees, where we can help them save some money from a taxation perspective and still give them, again, that same corporate backbone and infrastructure that some of the larger companies would give them.
Right. Yeah. So you can't understate enough that feeling of support. It sounds like you guys make people feel like they're part of a team too, which I think is underrated in our industry, by the way. Like everyone, like they go out and they're like, oh, I'm going to be a lone wolf hustler out there finding mortgages. And then they dropped the corporate world behind, and then they're not so far into it before they start realizing like there are actually some benefits to being a part of something bigger than yourself and feeling like you're building something and having that network to fall back on and work together with. That is amazing. So to wrap things up, as you think about your career and your life so far, what do you envision for the rest of your life and career, and what do you want your lasting impact to be?
That's a pretty big question. So I don't know that I've got that lasting impact element, but I can tell you that I love this industry. I love what we represent to the marketplace. I love what we often represent to each other as well, in the camaraderie and the support and the way that we enable the market and our clients' dreams. So my goal is to continue to be in this business, to continue to grow our reach. I look forward to the remainder of 2025, where we're going to expand the company into a couple of new regions as well. So I look forward to some news on that. Continuing to establish great partnerships with our lenders is absolutely critical to our long-term success. So, continuing to engage with them is a big part of my plan. And I'm not going anywhere. I love this business. So I think we've got a long runway. Currently, I think there's 29,000 mortgage brokers licensed across Canada. As I said earlier, there's 370 that are with Indi. So using the rule of 10%, we still got a little bit of headroom for us. And we're looking forward to connecting with the next great agents out there that are looking for a taste of independence.
I love that. That's really well said. And such an awesome, honest mission. It sounds like you really enjoy it. So Gord, and to the other Gord and the wives and everybody who couldn't be here on this call with us today, and you're representing Indi, just thank you guys for what you guys are doing. Thank you for the partnership, and continue building, because we are very excited about what you guys are doing. We think you're doing something special. So thank you.
Thank you very much.